I want to start with a question. What if the hardest part of coming out wasn't telling the world, but learning how to forgive yourself? Because that was my real battle. Not the moment I said the words, not the day I finally accepted who I was. No, the hardest part was looking back at my life and realizing how much of it I had lived as someone else. And today, I want to tell you how I forgave myself, how I came to embrace who I am, and how I began to see a new life full of possibilities. Because if you are still in that place, or if you just came out and feel lost, this is for you. I lived a life that looked perfect from the outside. I had a wife. I had responsibilities. I had a role that I played very well. But inside, there was always something missing, and I became very good at ignoring it, at suppressing it, at telling myself that this was just life. I am sure you recognize this part quite well. But the truth is, living in the closet is exhausting. It is not just about hiding who you are. It is about constantly performing. Every conversation, every gesture, every decision, you are filtering yourself. You are editing yourself. And over time, you forget who you really are. Or don't you remember those moments when you're at the store, lost in your thoughts, and suddenly a hot man walks in front of you, and something shifts? You switched to autopilot. You keep pushing the cart following your wife, but in your mind, you are in wonderland with this man you just saw, imagining all the possible combinations in which you can make love to that man. It is so real that your body starts reacting, and then, "Hey, honey, do you think this is okay for dinner?" And just like that, you're back. Look, I remember nights lying in bed next to my wife, feeling completely disconnected. Not because she was a bad person, but because I wasn't being honest with her or with myself. That silence, that emotional distance, it slowly eats you alive. I was in a sexless relationship with my wife. After all, age tends to change us. But age had been generous with me, because my libido was still very high. And at some point, this pressure became too much, and I started looking for something I couldn't explain. All I knew was I didn't want another woman. You can call it being faithful to my wife, or maybe the thought of that man at the store. But a woman was never the solution for me. What I was craving was something deeper, something I had never allowed myself to explore. And yes, I started meeting men. Not because I was proud of it, but because I was starving. Starving for connection, starving for authenticity, starving for something that felt real. And most of us know that sex with men is not that complicated. But boy, this was the hard part for me, because every time I met a man, I was following my desires. Two men, naked in bed, having fun. But after it was over, there was this moment, this destructive and most horrifying moment, where I would instantly sit on the bed and say, not only to myself, but also out loud, "This is not me. What am I doing here?" And that sentence broke me, because part of me felt alive and released, and another part of me felt like I had betrayed everything. I felt guilt. I felt shame. I felt like I was living two lives and belonging to neither. I even remember that sometimes this struggle was so obvious that the host I was with asked me to leave and never come back until I had everything clear in my mind. And that
is one of the most painful places a man can be.
There was one moment I will never forget. After one of those encounters, I didn't rush out. I didn't distract myself. I just sat there. And I looked at myself, not physically, but deeply. And I realized something. The problem wasn't what I had just done. The problem was the life I had been living. That moment, "This is not me," was not a rejection of who I was becoming. It was a rejection of the lie I had been living. That was the turning point. Not clarity, but honesty. Painful, raw honesty. Coming out didn't fix everything. I wish it did, but it didn't. Coming out is not the end of the struggle. It is the beginning of a different one. Because now you have to face the consequences, the impact on your family, the disappointment, the confusion. And perhaps the hardest part is facing yourself. I went through periods of deep regret. I asked myself questions like, why didn't I do this sooner? How much time did I waste? Who could I have been? And those questions can destroy you if you don't learn how to answer them correctly. Forgiveness didn't happen overnight. It was a process, a very intentional process. And I want to share the steps I followed, because maybe they can help you too. Step 1. I forgave the man who was trying to survive. I had to understand that my past self was not weak. He was scared. He was doing what he thought was necessary to survive in a world that didn't always feel safe. And once I saw that, I stopped attacking him. Step 2. I allowed myself to grieve. I grieved the years I didn't live authentically. I grieved the relationships that were not real. I grieved the version of myself that never got to exist. But I gave that grief a place, not a home. I refused to live there forever. Step 3. I separated desire from identity. Those moments when I said, "This is not me," they were confusing, because I thought my actions defined me, but they didn't. What I was feeling was not wrong. It was misaligned. I was reacting out of repression, not out of understanding. Step 4. I redefined authenticity. Authenticity is not something you miss. It is something you start. Today, in this moment. Every honest decision I made was a step toward becoming whole. Step 5. I chose to live forward, not backward. I stopped asking, what did I lose? And I started asking, what can I still build? Because my life wasn't over. It was just beginning in a different way. Forgiving myself was not a favor I did for myself. No, it was a step in my life, a very much needed step that helped me move forward. After this step, something beautiful happened, because when you forgive yourself, you stop fighting yourself. And when that happens, you start to experience life differently. I began to feel peace. Not perfect peace, but real peace. I began to connect with people honestly. I began to see myself without judgment. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to become someone else. I was simply allowing myself to be. Life gives us opportunities, and it is up to you if you want to take them or let them pass. I certainly understand that sometimes fear, sorrow, or pain can blind us so badly that we are unable to see these opportunities. Let me tell you this. I took the opportunity life gave me to forgive myself, and after that, I do not remember any of my hosts asking me not to come back again. And that
is freedom.
If you are watching this and you feel stuck, ashamed, or confused, I want you to hear this. You can only be truly happy when you allow yourself to be who you are. Not who the world expects, not who your past demands, but who you are right now. And yes, it will be uncomfortable. Yes, it will be painful. But it will also be honest. And honesty is the foundation of peace. I spent decades trying to be someone else, and it almost cost me everything. But the moment I forgave myself, everything changed. Not because my past disappeared, but because it no longer controlled me. So, if you are still holding on to guilt, if you are still punishing yourself, let me tell you something. You have suffered enough. It is time to let go. It is time to forgive. And it is time to live. Because your story is not over. In fact, it might just be beginning. And this time, you get to be yourself.